will tell how All Elite Wrestling is going to fare on the national and international stage. Optimists and defenders believe that AEW stands a strong chance of becoming a viable alternative to WWE, much in the same manner that WCW was back in the mid-90s. Since World Championship Wrestling's demise in 2001, promoters have tried to pick up the pieces and fill the WWE alternative void, only to generally fail spectacularly. The Florida-based X-Wrestling Federation and Australia's World Wrestling All-Stars were the first volunteers in tribute to replace WCW, but neither had lasting power. But then a rather earnest product entered the fray. In May 2002, Jerry and Jeff Jarrett announced the formation of NWA TNA, a weekly pay-per-view series that would blend familiar faces with some of the best young talent not signed to WWE. Through various name changes, what is now Impact Wrestling still exists 17 years later, much in the same way that Wile E. Coyote is always good as new after his Roadrunner catching schemes catastrophically fail. But rather than rack our brains trying to figure out how Impact has survived for so long, let's take a friendly look back at a bygone period. With AEW's All Out in our sights, let's go back to June 19th, 2002 and see where the participants on TNA's first ever event all ended up. Mason Ryan, Stevie Ray, Earthquake, Alundra Blaze, Norman Smiley, Zach Gowen, Bam Bam Bigelow, Ahmed Johnson, Torrey Wilson, Buff, Bagwell, Robert Gibson, Dave Taylor, Terry Taylor, and Godfather's Holmes. Dwayne Gill, Adam Bomb, Michael Hayes, Cor Von, S.A. Rios, Jim Manai, the manager from Kai and Tai, Jim Powers, Francine, Jack Swagger, Mean Gene, Fat Chick Thriller, Duke the Dumpster, Oklahoma Manta. What happened to that wrestler? Some were main eventing, which leaves me lamenting. What happened to that wrestler? Some since long forgotten, but their memories live on. The Flying Elvises. The athletic trio of Jimmy Yang, George Estrada, and Sonny Siaki bedecked themselves in white Elvis jumpsuits and struck some of the King's kung fu poses. Today, Yang operates a party bus company in Cincinnati, while Estrada's whereabouts are seemingly unknown after last wrestling in 2003. As for Siaki, he left the business in 2008 after donating a kidney to his ailing brother and now works with UPS in the Atlanta area. Low-key. The Jarretts populated their new X division with some of the top stars of the indies at the time, and the dynamic Loki was one of those standouts. The bone-jarring kicks and effortless agility made Loki one of the division's early stars and remains a sought-after name on the indies today. Jerry Lynn. WWE let the always underrated Lynn go earlier in 2002, and their loss was the gain of any promotion needing a rock-solid veteran who could hang with virtually any wrestler. Like Loki, Lynn was one of the early X division stars, known for his rivalry with the forthcoming entry. Now retired from the ring, Jerry Lynn works as a coach for All Elite Wrestling. AJ Styles. Styles had turned down a WWE developmental deal earlier that year, as a move to the Ohio area would have disrupted his wife's college plans. Instead, the immensely talented, phenomenal one became one of the key pieces of every men's division in TNA across an uninterrupted 11.5-year run. Styles continues his prolific wrestling career in WWE today, as the two-time WWE champion recently moved to Raw in the Superstar shakeup. T.O. and Hollywood. TNA made an early investment in pint-sized wrestlers, though the first such match sadly did not include the gun-toting, covertly whacking puppet, the Psycho Dwarf. T.O. was Puppet's main rival over the years and scored a simple win over Hollywood, for whom there doesn't seem to be much information available. As for T.O., the real-life Tony Elliott was still active as a wrestler, at least as of 2018. The Johnsons. For those of you who enjoy the intro and wanted to learn the fate of the Gemini, wonder no more. Except in 2002, they were not the Gemini, but rather Richard and Rod Johnson, two men dressed as phalluses at the behest of manager Mortimer Plumtree, who they'd apparently bullied in their youth. Please do not ask. The twins have largely been inactive for a decade, though did wrestle a match for IPW Hardcore Wrestling in July 2018. James Storm. Among the aerodynamic youngsters and recognizable veterans on TNA's inaugural broadcast, the Tennessee Cowboy didn't exactly stand out. Before long, he'd become one of the company's mainstays, ever reliable in both tag team and singles competition. Storm finished up a long run with TNA in late 2017 and freelances as a wrestler around the world today, including an unsuccessful challenge to NWA World Champion Nick Aldis in January. Psychosis. One of the longtime regulars on WCW's Cruiserweight division was used to help shore up the familiarity of the talent on TNA's first broadcast, teaming with Storm for unclear reasons. The following episode saw Psychosis return to his element, wrestling in the match to determine the first X Division champion. In his late 40s, the former Horned Masked Marvel is still going, wrestling all throughout North America in 2019 alone. The Dupps. What would pro wrestling be without a few redneck stereotypes, as Bo and Stand Up, cousins or brothers or whatever, wreaked havoc in the early days of TNA. They were accompanied by Fluff Dupp, for whom a way too close relationship was teased. Bo Dupp wrestles in the Carolinas in addition to coaching high school wrestling, while Stan, the future Trevor Murdoch, retired in 2017 and works today installing fiber optic cables for an equipment company. Christian York and Joey Matthews. The Young Lions had long joined the wave of Hardy Boys-esque duos that greeted fans with death-defying moves and new metal rocker hairstyles, but sadly were not long for TNA. On the initial broadcast, the two did a quick job to the Dupps before vanishing. Today, Matthews works as a producer for Ring of Honor while occasionally taking bookings, while York has remained an active wrestler at least into the summer of 2018. Buff Bagwell. Going forward, the final 20 names on this list were all entrants in the Gauntlet for Gold to determine the brand new NWA World Champion. The well-known and familiar Bagwell was the match's second entrant and did not last all that long among the fray. Bagwell still wrestles today, primarily in Tennessee and the Carolinas, and in recent years even worked as a male escort. Lash LaRue. Another WCW alumnus that was brought in to help recreate the sensation of the deceased promotion, the former Corporal Cajun was another early victim in the gauntlet. LaRue would come back later on and wrestle sporadically on TNA's secondary show Explosion in the mid-2000s. Lash last wrestled back in 2006 and today presides as a youth minister at the West Weaver Baptist Church in Weaver, Alabama. Norman Smiley. The mere mention of screaming Norman's name is sure to send you into a big wiggle fit, a move that would require more than the customary 7 seconds in Carmella's dance breaks. Like Bagwell and LaRue, Smiley was another WCW soldier sent to an early doom in the 20-man Rumble. For more than a decade, Smiley has worked as a trainer for WWE and continues to do so for the NXT developmental group. Slash. It made sense for the Jarretts to bring in some talents they knew from Jeff's days as a star in Memphis's USWA, and the former Wolfie D was counted among them. Except instead of playing a punk white boy rapper, the real-life Warren Wolf was made over as Slash, a sinister gothic henchman in Father Mitchell's Disciples of the New Church. Today, Wolf works at a car dealership in Brandon, Florida. Prince Justice. An unfamiliar face to most fans at the time, this larger, bulkier Rhino lookalike made a minimal splash in the gauntlet before being eliminated. A year later, Justice resurfaced in TNA under a mask as the Inhumane Abyss, where he would enjoy an uninterrupted 16-year run as the company's resident monster, as well as Meek Attorney. As of 2019, Abyss has come aboard with WWE, where he now works as a producer. Bruce. At one time, Alan Funk was known as Kwee-Wee in WCW, and here he played a similar edgy character as Lenny Lane's equally flamboyant partner in the Rainbow Express, where he wrestled as Bruce. Unfortunately, the following year, Funk suffered a near-catastrophic facial injury during a match in Finland that required multiple surgeries and left him deaf in one ear. Funk's last matches of note came in 2011 for Lucha Libre Warriors USA. K-Crush. Taking a wrestler neglected by another company and getting the most out of them is a time-honored tradition, and TNA did just that with the former K-Quick. Out of the gate, K-Crush, soon to be redubbed Ron the Truth Killings, was presented as an angry young man who tired of the industry's prejudices and even got a world title reign out of it. Today, the man known as R-Truth is still with WWE, and many would argue is one of the most entertaining aspects of both weekly WWE shows. Del Rios. Don't be alarmed, this isn't Alberto Del Rio, but rather longtime Memphis regular Harry Del Rios, who competed as the Spellbinder and later briefly in WWE as Fantasio, the wedgie-doling magician. In his lone TNA appearance, Del Rios got a huge initial pop, simply because he'd made himself over to look like Scott Steiner, getting the fans' hopes up. Del Rios seemingly left the business for the most part about a decade ago and has competed in various fitness competitions since. Conan. At the time, K-Dog's appearance in TNA was pretty much a one-off, with his formation of the Three Live Crew alongside Ron Killings and BG James, aka Road Dogg, taking place the following year. Until then, he was just one of a number of renowned stars that were fed to a monster heel that we'll visit later on. Conan keeps busy today, working for Impact and MLW in various roles, roles while hosting Keeping It 100 on Westwood One's Jericho Network. Rick Steiner. Assuming the dog-faced gremlin didn't mistake Del Rios for his brother, his night was fairly routine and free of confusion. Work the gauntlet, toss out 2 men before meeting his own exit. In later years, Steiner would resurface in TNA, sometimes teaming with brother Scott. Though active well into his 50s, Steiner hasn't wrestled since 2017 and keeps busy as a realtor for Atlanta Community's real estate brokerage. Jeff Jarrett. Many would have assumed that the founder of the promotion would have made himself champion on day one, but don't worry, those days of racking up title reigns were still to come. Jarrett lasted the bulk of the match from the number 1 spot before country singer Toby Keith helped facilitate his elimination. Jarrett works for WWE today, a notion once assumed unfeasible, helping out as a producer and even competed in the 2019 Men's Royal Rumble. Chris Harris. The Wildcat sadly became a bit of a joke several years later thanks to a harebrained short-lived run in WWE as Braden Walker, complete with bad matches and bad promos. In TNA, he and James Storm comprised America's Most Wanted, who, in a perfect world, would have given us 5-star classics with the revival around the horn. Over the past several years, Harris wrestled on the Ohio independent scene and is said to have recently gotten engaged. The Vampire Warrior. Forget the name, we know Gangrel when we see him, and the blood-spewing Nosferatu is always a welcome sight in any setting. Most of these entries were one-offs to ratchet up the star power, and Vampire Warrior was no exception, adding a little more prestige to the main event. Now 50, Gangrel is still going, performing on the indies primarily in Florida as well as the northeastern US. Devon Storm. The former Crowbar pretty much kept the same look for himself, though he reinvented his prior ring name by this time. As 2002 wore on, Storm joined Father Mitchell's Disciples of the New Church, working under the name Tempest. Still active as a wrestler in his mid-40s, Storm also operates a healthcare facility in New Jersey with his wife, where he works as a physical therapist. Steve Corino. The king of the old school previously reigned as NWA World Champion for much of 2001, months after becoming one of the final champions of the fading ECW. Corino went on to appear in TNA once more in early 2003, but much of his work in this time period came with Ring of Honor, which he'd become more synonymous with. Seemingly finished up as an active wrestler, Corino teaches the advanced classes at WWE's Performance Center and is also a producer for NXT. Brian Christopher. A year after getting released from WWE, the former Grandmaster Sexay tried to jumpstart his fortunes with the debuting TNA promotion and made a good showing in the gauntlet. A heel turn followed weeks later, during which time Christopher openly slagged Father Jerry Lawler. Christopher's life came to a sudden end in July 2018 at age 46 when he was taken off life support hours after being found hanged in a jail cell in Tennessee. Apollo. The muscular Apollo had an exceptional look, standing about 6 feet tall and bearing the physique of a credible powerhouse heavyweight. TNA definitely had early designs on making something out of Apollo, though he never really rose to stardom in his stop-start 4 years with the company. Today, Apollo wrestles for various promotions in Puerto Rico, including World Wrestling League, World Warriors Wrestling, and IWA Puerto Rico. Scott Hall. 6 weeks after getting fired from WWE after the plane ride from hell incident, Hall's considerable star power and presence were given another chance, arguably the biggest star on TNA's first broadcast. Hall would appear for the company on and off over the coming months before finishing up in October. Now retired from the ring, Hall makes occasional guest appearances at various WWE events as well as Legends functions. Malice. Once known as The Wall in WCW, Jerry Toot dropped considerable weight, grew his hair out, and was cast as Father Mitchell's ultimate monster, the freak of nature that would lay waste to the TNA competition. Malice made it to the end of the gauntlet but fell just short of capturing the vacant belt. Unfortunately, in December 2003, Toot died of a heart attack during a tour of All Japan, aged 36. Ken Shamrock. The world's most dangerous man was a respectable choice to be the upstart company's first champion, overcoming Malice to complete the gauntlet that night. Shamrock vanished from the promotion after dropping the belt to Killings that August before resuming his MMA career. Shamrock actually made a comeback in wrestling in the past year, working for several promotions across the US and Canada after losing his most recent MMA fight to longtime nemesis Royce Gracie at a Bellator card in 2016.
Thanks for watching. Let us know what you think in the comments down below. You can follow us on Twitter at Cultaholic. You can find us on Facebook at facebook.com/Cultaholic. If you enjoy what we do here at Cultaholic, you can pledge to us on Patreon. That's patreon.com/Cultaholic. And most importantly, don't forget to hit subscribe and join us.